Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the Austin Sister Cities Protocol Training in partnership with Austin Community College and their Continuing Education Department and International Programs Department. My name is Aditi Joshi, and I serve as the Vice Chair of Austin Sister Cities International. Our training today focuses on our three sister cities in Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan. The training is brought to you by Dr. Kevin Clark from Austin Community College. He will go through the presentation with you, and all members who are attending this event today are welcome to write their questions in the chat. Q&A has been moved to the end of the training, where we will have a time to clarify any points you have. This training is also available on demand on YouTube. We welcome you to share your feedback and your suggestions for any future trainings you would like to bring to us. And with that, Dr. Clark, I hand over to you to begin the training.
Thank you very much, Aditi. Welcome everybody here today. I'm excited to spend this sort of beautiful Friday morning with you to travel across the world a little bit and talk about three countries here in Asia, um, which are Japan, Korea, and Taiwan. And in fact, you'll note it switches. We often switch between the term South Korea and Korea. We'll look at a little bit at that too. So let's take a look here. Um, we could just kick things off. Everybody wants to comment in the chat where you're calling from today. You can always share your LinkedIn profile link, anything you like. Just let us know who you are. Along the way, I can ask some questions if you like an answer, and this gets it a little bit more involved. And as Aditi said, we can do some question and answer at the end if you like. All right. Does anybody want to volunteer? Okay. Well, do it, of course, along the way. That's one thing I love about Zoom. I have Zoom classes, and it's great that people can feel like without interrupting, they can say things right in chat. I love that because that helps the feedback in the moment, helps continue the presentation. All right. So first, I want to talk a little bit about my journey here. How in the world would somebody get into talking about travel and how that impacts business protocol? So when I was a teenager, I was in a magazine called Teen World Magazine. And I didn't think much about it. And then I got letters. So I had pen pals. Do you remember when we used to write with pen and paper? So I had pen pals. And I used to get letters and I'd write some back. And it was good. It's good for your self esteem. But it was good to know that there was a world out there. And it turns out the magazine also is then published in Europe. So I got European pen pals. And then as far as I know, only in Japan, and I got some Japanese pen pals. It was great. I looked forward to coming home from school every day and seeing if I got letters. Also, from seventh grade to 12th grade, I had 6 years of cotillion. Of course, it's a very Southern sort of thing where you learn, basically you're learning a little bit of manners and a little bit of etiquette, some of the formalities, how to stand up straight, dress better, and be polite, and interact. And looking back, I see that that's pretty valuable because if you can at least stand straight and speak the right way, the content comes after it. And that's what we're doing here today. It's not about content when you have an exchange with partners abroad. It is how you get in the door. So by the time I was in college, I lived in an international dorm, and then I lived abroad in Belgium. Here's a picture of me it's called Moa. It's an 8th century Belgian fort. I lived there for a year and traveled. I went at the time to Russia, and I traveled around Europe. I spent a lot of time in France and in Britain. And finally, today, I have PhD programs in linguistics and communication studies, particularly critical and cultural studies. So I do a lot of reading of cultural text and a lot of popular readings too. And I've published, and I use what we're doing today. I use it in class quite a bit. In fact, students are just starting on an untranslatable project where they take an untranslatable word in another language and make a video and present it. We have a video day. If it's in class, we have popcorn and drinks. And it's a lot of fun. So let's move into this now. Of course, why sister cities if you're in sister cities? Um, hello. Oh, I'm just noticing here, Angela. Mineral Wells, you're an associate professor at St. Ed's. Well, welcome aboard. Um, so, of course, why sister cities? In case, just as a reminder, as a reiteration, that it promotes mutual understanding and exchanges, trade, investment, and joint ventures, and lasting personal connections. And that's the point. Our job here today, what communication is largely about here, business protocol, is how to connect with people. It's not about the actual content when you connect. It's so that you can connect. Because if you can't connect, it doesn't matter how good you think your product is or your exchange or whatever else it is. And that's what we're here for today. And of course, here are our three sister cities uh, as you fly abroad. When I first had this generated, it tried to have it fly all the way across Europe. I imagine that would be a pretty long trip. Um, and then the longest flight I've ever been on, actually from San Francisco to Taipei last year, 14 and a half hours. It's quite a long flight. It looks nice on the map here, but this is nice. Here's the path we're going to take today. We're going to talk about the three T's here and how you move from one to the other. And this is going to help with your interconnections and your exchanges with your partners in Asia. The first is what is the tourist, what is the traveler, and what's the trusted guest. And we hope that you move to the level of a trusted guest. Then we're going to look at Japan, South Korea or Korea, Taiwan, and just get to the end there, how to be the trusted guest, how to be a citizen diplomat. So you're probably not in any official capacity, but as I was told, even in college when I did study abroad, you're always representing where you're from. And in this case, it's not just the US, the South, Texas, Austin. You are a person, an individual, but you're also a representative. And that's what makes you a citizen diplomat, an individual who's also in a position of representation. Now, have you ever felt overwhelmed when you're abroad? So, depending on your background, you've probably been to places they have more comfort. I was just talking to Aditi and Rebecca, talking about places they've been before and they go back to. So you have something to compare it to. But there's always the stress. What if it's been a few years? Things are different. You're not quite the same because you now live here. Um, and people do experience stress. You can feel overwhelmed. And this is what we're about here. So let's say your time is limited. You're going to Japan, let's say, and you're going to have an exchange with partners. And you go, well, my time's limited because I'm busy. I have a job, I'm busy. But here's what we're trying to look at here. If you have a few extra days, let's say you're going to meet on Monday, at least fly out maybe Thursday, and you've got 3 days to reacquaint yourself or simply to acquaint if it's new, because places always change. There's an old expression that you can't step into the river in the same place twice because even if the river's there, it's a different, the river's different as it flows. And of course, you're different too. Now, I have a picture here that reminds me of when I lived in Belgium, and it was about 3 hours by train. I spent a lot of time in Paris, and I remember being along the banks here, maybe the left bank, and you could see Notre Dame on the Ile de Cité behind. And I remember seeing this Midwestern couple. I could tell by their accent. And the husband asked the wife, "Are you going to take a picture of Notre Dame?" She said, "I will as soon as I can get these guys selling stuff out of the picture." And I always was amused by this because there are a lot of North African, French speaking generally, people selling trinkets and wares and stuff in Paris. This is a normal part of Paris. Now, the picture I have here is of Paris. It's not the Paris of our dreams or the Paris that's in the postcard that you can buy already. This is Paris. These gentlemen are Paris. This is part of what Paris is. And if you want an easy souvenir, you've got something right there. But they're not leaving. This is what they do. This is part of the city. And this is the kind of thing you have to come to terms with. I remember that as a pretty foundational moment for me to see that. Okay. So what we want to look at here is our three steps. Again, as I said, tourist to traveler to trusted guest. You can see some of the things that it involves, and we'll cover some of these. The basic thing is for tourists, the question is, what can this place do for me? And then as you get more acquainted, you get into the culture a little more, you visit it, is you say, how does this place work? And this makes you a traveler. Now, a lot of shows and books often aim for this. We'll see this here today to get to the level of traveler rather than tourist. A tourist is seen, in fact, with the little icon there, as with the big bulky camera. Of course, they don't now. They may. They generally have their cell phone. They sort of get in the way. And I just saw the videos posted about what American tourists look like abroad, and it shows a man with shorts on, t-shirt, and he's wearing uh, you know um, clogs. It's like, well, yeah, it kind of stands out because it's the American style dress, right? What we want to do though is get to this third category, and you won't find many shows, but you'll find books of people that immerse themselves in the culture. They become trusted guests, and that's how can I participate respectfully. And you see here, you'll see the thing right under it is very important. The first two things, you actually develop relationships and you know people. So when you return, you'll see this same person. And it can work in reverse. I've done presentations for visiting Danish students. They come to ACC for 2 weeks, and the same person is always leading the group. And we always have a nice talk when the students are busy doing something else. And it's always nice to have that relationship. We know each other's name. I think it makes him feel more grounded in Austin to see a familiar face. You'll see here just some other things too, real briefly. We'll look at, like, say, meals. There's familiar food you try out in France. You're going to look for, say, a crepe, right? They're on the street vendors. Traveler looks for local food. Doesn't have to be the standard stereotype. And then you share meals. And that's what we're going to get to, of course, because dining is going to be a part of this. All right. So let's step into, if you would, the first one. Notice the things here for a tourist. They're looking for attractions, landmarks, familiar food. It's easy to judge quickly. I'm going to show you three clips from the sitcom Everybody Loves Raymond, where Raymond and his family go to Italy. And you'll see him at the beginning, middle, and end, where he evolves it sort of into a trusted guest in the span of just 2 weeks. And we'll kind of finish that off. We'll look at some other travel writers too, like Samantha Brown, Adam Gopnik, Rick Steves, and kind of get to our classic case of Ben Franklin versus John Adams and the way they go abroad and interact in the 18th century. All right, so you have to pardon me here for a second. This doesn't quite, in order to use links here to keep it in YouTube, I'm going to show you the beginning of this. So if you know this series, Everybody Loves Raymond, it was on for 11 seasons. Now, in this, Phil Rosenthal, the producer, asked Ray one time, Ray Ramon, who plays Ray Barone in this. He said, are you going on vacation this summer? He goes, I might go to the shore, because he didn't like to travel. And this gave Phil Rosenthal this idea for this two-parter where Ray's mother, Marie, gets the whole family to stay with her Aunt Coletta in this small town half hour outside of Rome. And you get to see Ray evolve, and Ray, in both cases, you get to see him evolve really as a human being, the individual, the actor, but also Ray Barone, the character in this show. So let's see. Let me get to this. Hold on just a second. I have to play with sharing just a little bit. And I'm afraid we have to look at ads. I apologize. All right. So, pardon me. This is just the way we have to do things. All right. So here we go. This is when they first get there, and Aunt Coletta is showing them their room. We have an idea of what it's like when someone um, can for a moment actually see the beauty of a place, but also just be trapped into it not being ideal for them, especially when they only get 2 weeks off a year and they're spending the whole 2 weeks in this small room in a small house in a small town in Italy. Okay, so Ray here is a tourist. Now, some people play into this market. Rick Steves' whole business is based in the tourist mindset, and he knows that. We're not saying this is wrong, it's just different. You don't need to be fancy, you just need to be smart. His idea is how can you see and do the most with the least amount of money? And in some ways, the most saving the most time, like getting a sleeper car and a train in Europe so that you save a night in a hotel and that sort of thing. And it's the bucket list, the things that you have a checklist of. You might literally have a checklist with you. Classic case, the most visited places, things like Colosseum in Rome. It's very detailed to the minute. You take quick trains, and of course, flights. He recommends flights now for longer distances because they've gotten more affordable in Europe. You respect the culture, you learn a few words. You probably go to the restaurant or the cafe that has a menu in English or has pictures of food. That's usually designed for tourists. And he has it in there. In fact, he even has travel tips about how to travel. You see there with his backpack, where he basically travels for weeks with just what he can carry on his back. And this is what he learned in his first treks as a young man when he was in college. So he says tourism's the easy part. It's the beginning of the journey, not the end of it. And that's right, because we're going to go from tourist to traveler. Now he knows this, but he knows there's a good niche market out there of people who have limited time and money and are squeezing in what they can to hit the big things. Okay. Now, maybe you felt overwhelmed trying to get everything to fit. Um, yeah. Uh, Everything to fit into your brief adventure before perhaps you meet with colleagues, and you can be overwhelmed by new environments. You're not sure what to look at because, as a species, humans learn to find patterns that they're comfortable and familiar with. It's part of survival, and all of a sudden things look different. You might see here there's this restaurant, sort of a chain. Well, there's a few of them in Japan called Moku Moku, and even see that you go, well, wait, is that like a door I go around, or how do I get in there? And in fact, you may just be unfamiliar with how it works. Do I need to announce myself? Do I serve myself, etc.? These things can be overwhelming because you're doing it all day. Your senses are all firing all at once all day long. Okay. So what we want to do is move to traveler mode, and we're going to see that this involves what people do in daily life. You look for patterns. There's local food. Now, you obviously have gotten to the stage if you're with sister cities in some form and you've gone abroad. I think most people here, you're here because you love travel. You don't have to explain it to fellow travelers generally. Uh, but you already know if you've been somewhere more than once, you look for patterns, you look for local food, etc. Um, and You want a greater understanding of the culture. And that greater understanding is what makes you a better partner for business protocol. So we can look at Ray again, pardon. We can see what happens here when Ray's been in town for about a week, and he's finally feeling better physically. He's feeling better emotionally as he takes in the richness of this small town. Hold on just a second. And pardon
Base
the ads,
44
Hannah,
super
put
agents.
me
The
in.
next thing you can't live without. Clearing up your email, scheduling meetings.
All right, hold on just a second. Let me get back in there. And here we go. That Ray is fully invested in just exploring this corner. This corner here is not going to show up in the guidebook. And came across it by happenstance, but he is now a traveler. He knows what it's like to kick around a soccer ball with kids. He sees young people walking by. He has pizza. A little earlier, I didn't show here, he sees that they have they wrap flowers a little differently. And even his own mother doesn't notice it, but he does. Okay. So here's how a tourist becomes a traveler. Now, this is partly based in the travel host, Samantha Brown, and Places to Love, where she's traveled enough. She goes back to the places she particularly likes. She moves from being a stranger to being recognized to being the familiar. And by day 5, they say, glad to see you. What she does here is go to a deeper level than sightseeing and understands how a place works. It creates small routines, create familiarity. Familiarity creates relationships, and relationships create trust. Now, this is not yet a trusted guest, but it comes with these deeper relationships, reciprocity, and time. We're going to see in all of our presentations for Austin Sister Cities that generally there's no quick fly in and out for a deal. It looks that way on paper, but you have to establish your connection with people. After all, a common thing when I teach public speaking is the bottom line is you may write an outline for speech. We don't know who's going to read the an essay in an English class, but the outline is always based on speaker connecting to audience. And this is you, the traveler, connecting with someone local. Now, the person that's a barista working in another country doesn't show up in the guidebook. This is not something you can do flying in and flying out. So if you'll bear with me here, and I'm going to show you just one video clip from her. She goes to Hong Kong, and I want you to notice here how she gets to collect herself each day at breakfast. Okay, hold on just a second.
When I'm in a destination,
Great.
for more than 3 or 4 days, one thing I really love to do in order to slow my travels down is to create a ritual. I like to find what's going to be my place, and I'm going to return to it often. And people think I'm crazy for doing this because, like, oh my gosh, we've got to go to different places every single meal, and every meal's got to change our life, right? And I just don't believe in that. So I always find the place that I'm going to begin my day at, have breakfast.
This is Shui Wa. It's what's called a tea restaurant here in Hong Kong. And with many locations around the city, it is the opposite of one of a kind. And yet, it's a reliable local spot with little wait where one can enjoy a good meal.
What you see here is Hong Kong on a plate. Literally the history of Hong Kong. So we've got some beef noodles for breakfast, but with the beef noodles come scrambled eggs and a nice buttered roll, and of course, a cup of tea. And I love that. Travel requires like incessant thinking, right? What am I gonna do today? How am I gonna get there? Is it gonna rain? Do I need to bring sunscreen? You know, I leave in 3 days. Did my upgrades come through? Like I just want my brain to stop. And the way that I do that is I return to a place that's familiar, and it gives me comfort, and then I just relax. And I get to eat noodles with a fork.
So there we go. She said it's the opposite of, a unique place, but to maintain sanity. And you go, well, my time is limited. Why would I go back to the same place? Now, I showed you just a few moments ago this place called Moku Moku. And it's one of my favorite restaurants anywhere. It's in Kyoto, Japan, and it was attached to the hotel I was staying at. It was sort of a bento box buffet style thing, which was just wonderful because every food item was something small enough to fit in one of the squares in the bento box. So each thing was sort of its own taste sensation. You could try things. It was great. Also, as a tea drinker, tea was flowing. And I found it really charming. And so I went there, I think maybe 3 times. Well, your time is limited in Japan, but I found the consistency to be nice. And I found even the feeling there that even if I'm not having a conversation with people working there, the cashier or other people, I got to people watch. I got to see how people did things. And in fact, at one point they were out of tea, which I was surprised because that's their main beverage in Moku Moku. And this woman in front of me put down her items and actually walked around to find the proprietor to say that they were out of tea. And I wanted to say, oh, it's okay. It's no big deal. But she made a point of it. And that's a memory I still have of that. And I wouldn't have had it if it had not just been sort of a place that's not that different than other places. It's like this. It's just chairs and tables. There's no white tablecloths. There's nothing dipped in gold. And if you've ever been to one of those restaurants, that's amazing. I've been there before. But it's just a regular place where people come and there's a sense of familiarity. Even right here in the US, if you ever stay somewhere in Manhattan, people say, find out where your local bodega is on the corner or your Korean convenience store. And that's the one you're going to go to every day. So this is part of being a traveler. Okay. Now, part of this is what's called the half-mile rule. I've also heard it called the 3-block rule, but I think That's not quite a half mile, is you're somewhere interesting. And if you're in the tourist bubble, you don't get far from where all the business are based on the fact that you want to see this famous location. The menus are in English, etc. It's fast, it's easy, you don't have to worry about translation. But if you go a little further, you get to connect better. If you see here at the bottom, there's a landmark, but here's what you do. Just go down a side street and you'll find a cafe. Now, I actually did this. Um, let's see, do I have it in here? Yeah, I did this. I was in London once in Piccadilly Circus, kind of like their Times Square. It was loud, it was busy. There was a TGI Fridays, and it's fine. You know, you want to see how that's different. The funniest thing is watching Americans walk around looking for the bathroom. But in Britain, of course, they have public bathrooms everywhere. They don't have the private ones in the restaurant, which our health codes require generally. But I walked like 3 blocks, literally 3 blocks, and came upon a little deli. And this fellow in there, like the first customer all day, I just ordered like a sandwich. And I started to reach for it, and he put his hand up because he wanted to make sure he cut it in half and put garnishes all around the sides. Now, I would have not gotten that for a nice meal in Piccadilly Circus, but just 3 blocks away, all enough off the beaten path to be sort of in the culture by walking a few blocks. And you'll notice there it doesn't require any transportation. Local faces, real conversations, great food. It's authentic. And that's the people in there are likely to be locals, not other tourists. One other thing about this, if you know the writer Adam Gopnik, he writes books, writes for the New Yorker. He said, I remember in the book Paris to the Moon, he lived for several years in Paris. He with his wife and his young son, who was in school there, who ended up speaking better French than he does. He's from Montreal. And his daughter was born when he was there, and he was all worried about how the hospitals work and if he has to get an ambulance. It's in Paris. But one of the things when he finally left and returned to New York, he said, a city should not merely be beautiful, it should be full. He had this sort of thing between, you can see here there's beauty and fullness here. The idea is that Paris was beautiful but not full because he didn't quite understand everything. He's not Parisian, he's not French. But New York he does, so New York is full, but not as beautiful. And of course, a tourist would say that's not true when they visit. You're trying to find a balance between fullness and beauty. And you can get a little bit of both when you just spend a little extra time, go off the beaten path, put away the itinerary. So if anybody wants to volunteer here, have you had a favorite trip? What do you remember? I have a picture here that could be anything. It could be the people you talk to. It could be other tourists. It's always a great thing when you're younger and you stay in a hostel. I used to just love staying in hostels because you always got great stories, great tips. Somebody always had a guitar for some reason. Anybody want to volunteer? If you want to save it to the end, that would be nice. Think about your experiences and how they fit into this. Were you a tourist? Were you a traveler? Okay. Now, here's the beautiful versus full. Of course, you want to see the monuments, the shrines, the temples, the palaces, etc. That is in your guidebook. It's in your itinerary. There's easy transportation there because they know that that's where tourists want to go. Sometimes it may be the only thing that you kind of want to see when you're there in that area. It's kind of a destination. But the fullness means things taking like public transportation, which I love. I'll say one of my things I collect, I love subways. I've been to nearly every subway in the US and in Europe, and 3 or 4, not very many in Asia, Japan, and Taiwan. The most beautiful, Moscow. The most wonderful, Paris. The oldest on the continent and very interesting is Budapest. The cleanest in the world, London, etc. But the thing is, that's the things you notice. You know what a train is, but then you start to notice the things that are slightly different, including the people. It's pretty wonderful. You go to cafes, you go to markets. You notice this is not a tourist market. This is a local market. I just love markets like this, even if you don't buy anything. You're just taking in the richness, the fullness of the experience. And their conversations, notice on the left, there aren't. You're talking to your fellow tourist on the coach or the bus that you're talking to. So beautiful shows you the city but full shows you the people. And Adam Gottnick said, travel is not just about seeing what's beautiful, but about noticing what's full. It did make him appreciate New York more. Okay, so let's move ahead here. So think about what teaches you more, watching the Tokyo sky tree at sunset or going to a tiny noodle shop. Now, several years ago, I went to Japan. I have a friend who has a friend. He's from Dallas. He married a Japanese woman. So we met up with them in Tokyo. First question I had to him, what's it like living in the biggest city in the world? But he took us down a street that got to another smaller street and smaller. And I thought after a while, it's going to be 2 feet wide. And it was a little place like the picture here that had maybe 6 or 8 tables. And I would have never found my way there or out of there without his knowing this area of the city. Had a wonderful meal, we had a nice conversation. His wife doesn't really speak English, and I only know a few words of Japanese, so he got to be a translator, and it was a lot of fun. Okay, so you can decide. And by the way, again, this is not about better or worse. It's about different. Some things you really just want to see what the monument is. It may be the only thing that you want to spend time with in that area. And you can mix the two, right? We're not saying one is more involved. One of them just takes more entrenchment, more time, more commitment. Okay, so now we want to move to what the trusted guest is. How can I participate respectfully? And the word is important and respectfully. You're not trying to co-opt a culture in any way, pretend that you are the culture. You want to be respectful of what it is. For example, I just a couple weeks ago was in Hawaii. It's one of my favorite getaway spots. It's not the old days where it's all resorts. I know just the right hotel in Waikiki that's never in the news. It has a kitchenette. I can shop and cook. I love doing that. There's nothing like making your own eggs in the morning and looking out the window. I always get the side of it that faces not the mountain behind, but faces the city, Waikiki. It's great. You can see the beach. You can see the Pink Palace or the Pink Hotel. And I've learned a few words of Hawaiian, but I'm not pretending to be part of Hawaiian culture. It's just to get through like this, as I tell my students, to be adaptable and portable, to get smoothly through the day. Good communication has nothing to do with the content. It's a soft skill, not a hard skill. I'm not learning facts. I'm learning how to slip through and be part of the scene. So you'll notice there it says shared meals. You can't share unless there's other people. You listen, and we're going to see that in a minute with Ben Franklin about listening. You don't make assumptions. And in fact, that's what we're aiming for. We're aiming to be like Benjamin Franklin, believe it or not, from hundreds of years ago. Okay. Maybe one travel writer who digs into this realm is Paul Theroux, if you know this travel writer. He writes novels and travel logs, not travel guides. He wrote, for example, Mosquito Coast. It was made into a movie. You might know his nephew is Justin Theroux. His son, Louis Theroux, he has a recent thing called the Manosphere. It's very interesting. But Paul Theroux's interesting. I actually had a conversation with him one time, and this was this quote. It's not from a book. It's what he told me. I said, well, what is your main advice you could say about travel? And he had to pause because it was kind of a very general question. He said, go where they don't want you. Advocate for venturing off the beaten path. Now, his are extreme, admittedly. He traveled through a war zone in Africa. And the way to get from one city to another is he would get into a cattle car on a train, hide between the cows, because he said they'll shoot people, but they're not going to shoot their own food. And he has a very interesting way of seeing things. He goes in Britain, he went around Kingdom by the Sea. He went in an inflatable kayak around the edges, not in the middle. So a very interesting way, and usually you have to read more about these, like Paul Bowles, an Englishman who lived in Morocco, and it's called Under the Sheltering Sky, about people that have really immersed sort of permanently into other cultures. He still talks about, he lives part-time in Oahu, about how he kind of doesn't fit in with native Hawaiian culture. And he feels like he gets shortchanged on that a little bit. So he's constantly an outsider. And that's what this is about. If you go where they don't want you, it's not made for tourists. but you are an outsider. You got to learn to navigate that path. Now, if we go back to the 18th century, we'll see that as the U.S. is a newly formed country, we're trying to have diplomatic appeals to other countries. And in particular, Benjamin Franklin became sort of the unofficial ambassador to France, which still had its king at the time. So this is Louis XVI. He would have met with. And John Adams comes over, as vice president, became president, who had a completely different approach. Adams wanted to be direct. Franklin is saying be adaptable and portable. So what we end up with here is, if you'll see, this is a very good miniseries about John Adams starring Paul Giamatti. And you'll see the two having a discussion here in Versailles. I believe it's either before or after they meet with the king.
Is it your purpose to destroy everything we've accomplished?
After
to engineer the
recall
of the fleet under Admiral d'Estaing? Or is this some new kind of diplomatic initiative? The direct insult followed by the petulant whine. What are you thinking of? A good diplomat, Mr. Adams, observes much, acts little, and speaks softly.
The Comte de Vergennes means to keep his hand beneath our chin, to prevent us from drowning, but not to keep our heads above the water.
You learn nothing, Mr. Adams, if you continue to exasperate and antagonize these people.
As I did in Philadelphia, and we declared independence, you'll recall.
In Philadelphia, we negotiated independence.
Well, you may be as patient and accommodating as you like, Doctor. But for myself, I will not voluntarily put on the chains of France while I am struggling to throw off those of Great Britain.
So we see here, Adams really had this sort of approach. He was a very good lawyer. He had this sort of idea that logic succeeds over everything. If it's in the law, if it's in the guidebook, this is what we do. But Franklin had a whole different approach as he lived there and worked there. The French called him Dr. Franklin. He did not even have a college education. They even made porcelain plates with his image on them, if you can believe that. The king was quite fond of him, and he was fond of the king. I'm afraid Adams didn't quite get along so well. Now, Franklin even learned French, but it was broken French. Fine. He still is able to communicate. He made an effort, and that's what counted. Sorry. So let's take a look here at what he said. He said, I will not put on the chains of France. He's trying to establish American sovereignty just as good as anyone else. But that's that's the logic of it. But as Franklin said about him, there's a direct insult followed by the petulant whine. This is what we saw Ray do. He's got a cold. The room is too small. I was going to continue, but I didn't. He has to learn to bathe in a bathtub that has an attached shower attachment. If you've stayed anywhere in Europe, you've probably seen those. Those are tough in winter because it gets really cold. And he didn't like it. And it didn't work right. And his aunt had to come in, and he's embarrassed because he's naked in the tub. Franklin is saying, look, observe and adapt. Observe much, act little, speak softly. He does still say speak, however, because you need to have conversations. And that means going two ways. He even embraced, we won't go into it here, he embraced stereotypes. As you see here, he's got a fur-lined collar. He adapted the stereotype that the French had of this new country of America, where we're sort of rural. And in this case, he wore coonskin hats, or beaver hats and fur coats, not like a mink coat, but like the kind you have in winter from the very animals you trapped back then. I mean, they didn't have polyester. They didn't have enough sheep for wool generally. So you might say, well, why do that? It's like, well, yes, but he can get the door. He's not trying to be somebody he's not. He is, and in fact, he even had extra hats shipped from the U.S. to France while he was there. He was there long enough. So he always dressed this way to look rural. He said, well, if I do that, they accept me and I can get in the door and then I can have a conversation. So he believed in building relationship through custom and what they do. You dine and toast as locals. and that fostered genuine relationships. So here's the thing. Let's say, who would you send if you were going to select your ambassador? And that might seem a rhetorical question because clearly, and it ended up being, Thomas Jefferson as well, who spoke French and that sort of thing. But Franklin was a better default citizen diplomat, right? Even in not an official position. Adams is all about what's official. But Franklin understood the patience it took to be adaptable and portable, represent himself as well as America. Okay, so now let's dig in with that with Japan, Korea, Taiwan. They each have their own distinct business customs. We're going to see there's some crossovers, but also the nuances matter too. If you get too used to, say, how the Japanese do it and you try to apply it in Korea, that could lead to trouble because if only 1 out of 5 things is different, the thing that stands out is the thing that's remembered. When we travel, for example, think of an airline. If you talk about somebody on a trip, think about it. You're at 35,000 feet. I remember being over the ocean, the middle of the Pacific, going to Taiwan, and I actually did some work and did things on Wi-Fi. So I'm 7 miles in the air and 1,000 miles from any coast, and I'm able to be online, and people bring me food and drink. Sounds great. But when you ask people about their trip, they go, "Oh, I remember turbulence. Before we landed, there was turbulence." We only remember the thing that doesn't work. So you have to be careful about the one thing that you think you had right. You had 4 right, the 5th thing you got wrong. But one of the things that's common among these East Asian countries is respect, hierarchy, and harmony. This helps you kind of pocket things as you go from one of these cultures to another. So some cultural highlights: Japan values formal communication, punctuality, and gift giving. Korea, strong personal relationships, loyalty, and trust. Taiwan, harmony, flexibility, and indirect communication. So let's dig in just a little bit here with our 3 countries. They have different histories but shared values. And in fact, they're inextricable in some ways. The Japanese had colonized Taiwan from 1895 to 1945, the end of World War II. You still see remaining Shinto temples. Things that continued from that. The bullet trains to Taiwan are unbelievable, and it's due to the Japanese. So there's a lot of crossover here. And of course, Japan conquered Korea, but there's these strong, deep histories. And we can see here that if you keep up with that, they're similar, but there's also some differences. This keeps you in check. You don't have to memorize things, of course. Our idea here is that you can have things written down in brief, but you know what? Just don't be the first one in line. Watch what other people do. Don't sit to the right, if you can, of the host, let's say, and you're the first served. Watch what the first person served, how they do things. Don't be the first person in line to shake hands. Observe what others do. That's what Ben Franklin. He didn't come up with that out of nowhere. He watched how people interacted and then modeled his behavior that way, and then could have a conversation about what he needed. So let's take a look at Japan first of all. Of course, we have some highlights here. I just kind of put these in here, but attire. So one of the things we want to look at here is greeting, meeting, dining, and refining. Now, greeting means what is your first impression of them and them of you? Well, the very first thing people see is what you wear. So, of course, you're going to dress the way you dress, going to a market at night or something. But you have to keep in mind, if you are in a more business sort of setting, you want to do what is standard for most of our, I think pretty much all of our sister cities, is this kind of international sort of Western wear. Now, things change all the time during the pandemic. Men started wearing fewer ties. And in fact, the silk of the tie switched over to be the silk of the pocket square. I'm a big fan of that because I love wearing sport jackets, but I don't have to wear a tie. But here's the deal. When in doubt, go formal. Because if you're the only one in the room with a tie, you can take it off, or it looks like you have somewhere else to go. But if you're the only one in the room without a tie, it's going to stand out. You're remembered as the one who wasn't dressed up enough. Likewise, it could be with jewelry for women, etc. But you'll notice the standard here: charcoal, navy suit, black. I would say really be careful. I have blacklisted here. Black can be problematic because black suits are fairly rare unless it's a tux. That's a different thing, formal wear. It can look like what a mortician wears. Charcoal gray, navy suit, white shirt, etc. You're doing pretty good. When in doubt about colors, a white shirt is always appropriate. A colored shirt may not be. So go with the most formal thing you can. One thing you'll see in Japan too is people still wear masks all over. By the way, Japanese people in Hawaii do that too. I often ask students before the pandemic, I said, why do they wear masks? And they said they don't want to get sick. I'm like, no, that's an American individualist idea. It's because they don't want to get other people sick. And that's what the masks are for. And by the way, ABC stores, they're everywhere in Hawaii. This sort of chain of its food and items and all of them sell face masks, usually with a Hawaiian theme. Okay, some things to do, because after all, the very first thing in a greeting is how do you initiate with another person? They've already seen what you're wearing. Do shake hands softly and briefly. Don't shake with both hands. Don't cup or squeeze. Now, this is important because handshakes are not only by firmness, but how long, how many shakes. And notice here's one thing different in the US. The thing is to note what's different. You don't make much eye contact. In the US, if you don't, you look suspicious, like you're hiding something. But Japan has a softer approach. You still look somebody in the eye, but you don't look too long. It's about the length of time. Now, the thing is, there's still a mix of East and West in Japan. There's bowing and there's shaking hands. You don't do them both, but here's an example. When Obama, as president, met the emperor, he did both, which is kind of a neat sort of hybrid. And the emperor seems to be quite delighted here. There's difference still between how men and women bow. A little bit different. Again, if you're not quite sure, watch what the person beside you does. Just observe and replicate, do what they do. And there's even different angles. This shouldn't be a surprise that the further you bow, the more formal it is. We can stick with the middle here of about 30 degrees. So it's not just a tip of the hat, you might say, and you're not completely bowing as if to royalty. It's just sort of in the middle. And that just shows respect. Your hands at the side and you go down. Now, the business card world seems to be in flux. People want QR codes. They want to be electronic on phones. But from what I can see, there is still a standard of actual physical items. People like that as part of being human. On good cotton stock, whatever, get the best you can. Vistaprint, other companies, you can order them. It's fairly inexpensive. It can be multiple colors. It can have a logo. But you'll notice that in Japan, one thing is how you present it. You do it with both hands and make sure the card is facing your partner. By the way, if you want to know if someone actually is Asian, who may be a cashier somewhere, you'll note that in the US, they'll hand you the receipt with both hands and it's facing you. It's so ingrained. So if you do that, it's showing respect because the card represents you and them. You want to make sure you can take pictures of them and all that, but you never bend them or toss them because it's like tossing away the other person. Now, I personally like to carry if I'm somewhere, I carry two small metal business card cases. One is with my cards and one is for the cards you collect. And later you can scan them on your phone and do all that, but you have them available. People do like physical cards even in 2026. Now, of course, if you know you're going to Japan, you can have them in both languages. You can't really go wrong by having things in two languages because regardless of whether somebody speaks Japanese or English, both are available. And that's really nice. And people will comment on because that's your design style. Okay. There are digital business cards, of course. There are things like the Line app. My friend in Taiwan use that. There are things that are very particular for Asia, Pan-Asia, not just Japan. But you can always check on that before you go and have things ready to go. Now, I don't really have many videos here for what we're going to do, But I'd like to point out things that you forget. You might be learning in a study guide of foreign languages how to speak certain things in Japanese, but we forget the nonverbals. Remember, nonverbal means verbal just means things that are words, that are symbols. Nonverbal means everything else, tone of voice, eye contact. But I want you to notice some in case someone uses these, if they don't want to say something out loud as verbal, to just be aware of what symbols can mean. I mean, nonverbals can mean.
私おいでこっちいやいやいやいやいやああ12345678910ピース丸×
So that's very nice. Now, you might wonder why not share some Japanese words? Well, that's the thing. You already know to look up some basic things. We know that things please, thank you, no thank you, yes, no, etc. But we tend to think nonverbals are universal, and they certainly are not. And in fact, particularly when she used the symbol for come here, for an American, that looks like stay away. It's the exact opposite. And when she did this about no, this makes it sound like there's a bad smell for an American. So you might interpret it. In fact, those are sort of two, well, no is not positive, but it's not offensive. And somebody saying come here, if you take it as stay away, then you may forget. People forget that nonverbals do vary according to culture. They're not universal. And again, sometimes they can mean the opposite. So just be aware of that. You know, you can watch a movie, watch a television show, and there's certainly many videos in YouTube to show whole conversations that include the words and the symbols. Often people will use them though because it's easier than speaking, right? Especially if it's somebody you don't know, it's a cashier and that sort of thing. Okay, a few more things. You want to be early. On time is 10 minutes early and on time is late. That's kind of what we say in the US. Here's the thing, like wearing more formal clothing. You know, you can always err on the side of being early because first of all, you don't know how transportation is going to work. You know this, you live in the same city, go somewhere all the time, and then that day it happens to be 30 extra minutes of traffic. I was just thinking about, I saw a show a couple of weeks ago in San Antonio, but I sure wouldn't want to be here in San Antonio this Saturday because of the NBA finals. Right, you never know. Here's the deal. If you're ever somewhere where it's okay to be on time and you get there early, why not have a seat in the lobby and catch your breath and think about your day, right? You can always be early, but late is problematic. Also, don't forget, this is something we cover in public speaking. People don't usually know the difference between heat sweat and flop sweat, that is nervous sweat. It could be you were running. Oh gosh, I found the building. Now I got to run upstairs. The elevator's taking too long. And you're getting a little dewy in the face because of exertion, but it looks like nervousness and it's not a good way to start. Okay, oddly, this is something really quite opposite of the US, is that falling asleep is actually in a meeting is considered complimentary because it means that you've been so busy that you were falling asleep. People who even fake being asleep. Of course, in the US, we would quite see that quite the opposite. In dining, of course, this is the thing. Remember that when we talk about this, it's always about dining and toasting, not eating and drinking, because all cultures use food ceremonially in some form. Remember, you're not there for nutrition and you're not there to get inebriated. You are there to celebrate. So, may I make a suggestion? If you ever go to anything where there is dining, maybe have a little snack beforehand. Take a protein bar, a kind bar, and have a little snack, a little something to drink, because you don't want to seem too hungry. If it looks like you're eating out of hunger in most cultures, including Japan, it looks like the food itself doesn't matter. You eat too fast, you can't speak, you can't listen as well. And likewise, you should always be the most sober person in the room. Um, Despite being offered drinks, there's ways around it. Don't drain your glass because, as a Russian proverb goes, once words come out of your mouth, you can't eat them again. And that could get you into trouble. So remember, it is ceremonial. It's dining, not eating. It's toasting, not drinking. So always check these. These can vary depending on the formality of the event. Just watch what other people do. One thing interesting is you always pour a drink with the right hand. You can hold your arm or sleeve with the left hand while pouring. If you did that in the US, it looks like you're too weak or too drunk to pour. Um, okay. Just some do's and don'ts real quick about taking your shoes off. And people are insistent, by the way, the same, we'll see it's same in Taiwan. You'll just completely forget, but you take your shoes off for everything. And it originally came from the street being dirty and you don't want to spread it into the house. I personally do it in my own home. I don't walk around in shoes in the house or I wear slippers. Um, they'll be provided, by the way, separate slippers for, say, the bathroom, etc. The chopsticks, be careful. You may use them in the US, but you want to make sure you use them the proper way, especially making them stand up upright. It resembles a funeral. And gift giving is always something. Remember the physical business cards? Well, guess what? Gifts are something physical too. They're just small representations. There's a reason there's so many gifts at the airport. By the way, a great way. Austin just got ranked second best airport in the country, by the way, for food. And we also have a lot of wonderful places you can get quality gifts if you don't have time or you want to do it in the airport. So remember to something thoughtful, not something expensive. When you're dining, you can always mix and match their version of American cuisine. For example, if anybody knows about Japan, if you ask them what's a three-letter word for Christmas in Japan, and it's KFC. Everyone goes has KFC fried chicken. And you can go national in both countries. You can see their version of American food, just as they'll see our version of Japanese food. One last thing in refining, we've done greeting, meeting, dining, and now refining. You do have to constantly keep up with the role of women in business. In the US, we tend to be pretty broad with that working across the board. But you got to remember, in more hierarchical societies like Japan, you have to be careful with how women interact. Women are viewed first as foreigners, so that's pretty good. But if you invite them to lunch or dinner, let them choose the restaurant. By the way, a way around a lot of issues, have lunch, not dinner. It's daytime. It's bookended by the beginning and end. There is no end of the evening. There's simply end of lunch. That's why there's this American dating thing called just lunch. That's a suggestion just about anywhere, but that applies in Japan. You might take an hour out. It's condensed, generally less expensive. It's got a nice way to see people. It's daytime. You have the rest of the day. Opt for lunch if you can. All right, let's take a look at Korea, if you would. Now, the thing is, technically, it is South Korea. More to the point, it's the Republic of Korea, in contrast to North Korea, which is the People's Democratic Republic of Korea. But we call them, of course, North and South. But you'll notice that, for example, Hyundais are made by the Korean Motor Company. They don't use South. So I'm kind of adopting what people tend to say as what's the standard bearer for Korean culture is South Korea. So we're just going to call it Korea here. Again, dark suits, white shirts, you're fine, minimal jewelry. I'd like to point out just about anywhere, we don't have listed. The proper amount of cologne and perfume to wear is 0 because you can't go wrong with nothing, but you can go wrong with overwhelming scents for people or allergies. The best thing you can do is to simply be fresh and clean. Overall apparent clothing, usual things. I'll just like the little stats here. In Korea, a short bow often precedes a handshake. See how that's the slight difference from Japan? Where you do one or the other, but not both. But here, you might start with the bow and then move to the handshake. It recognizes both. It's in sequence. When you use the right hand to shake, support it with the left hand like you did with pouring a beverage. Now, these are the things you want to notice, or it just seems odd. There's nothing about it that necessarily it makes logical sense. It's just that's what they're used to, just like we're used to things, right? So just follow, notice it, look at videos. Don't be the first one to shake hands. And again, a light grip. Again, a light grip in the U.S. implies weakness, but it appears as aggressiveness in Korea. Again, business cards. And you have to be careful with titles. So the order of name, surname comes before given name, but the titles are Mr., Mrs., Miss, or Doctor. For example, in the US, we only have 3 now, right? We have Mr., Ms., and Doctor, and that's it. We don't have other titles. So it's important to go formal again if you're not sure. Give the full formal title, and if they want you to call them by a more reduced name, first name, etc., they'll let you know. Again, business card design, this should sound familiar. Now, if you're going to Japan and Korea, get 2 sets of cards. They're not that expensive. Don't confuse them. Put them in different little metal cases so you don't confuse them. And you can double-side it. And this is great. This shows, by the way, do check your translation. Don't expect Google Translate to get it right. Make sure you get that translation correct. And the hand position, etc. Card, oh, I don't have it there. Okay, this picture doesn't really make sense. You do hand it to the person with both hands. You're giving them an offering. The card faces them. It's very polite, and they'll do the same. And gifts again, the slight bow and some wrapping. Small gifts. Here's some recommended gifts. Again, company branded. Something from your country would be great. Things from Austin are great. People love it. By the way, FIFA's just started. It was in Mexico City. Soccer is popular around the world, and we have a soccer team. Austin's FC is a great branded item around the world. Grab a few things and take them with you. By the way, even if the person given to them may not hold on to it, their kids are going to love it. Things to avoid, because there's, I don't know who's given knives for gifts, but overly expensive. It's not about value, by the way. And by the way, this is something my friend in Taiwan finds one of the oddest things is that you do often give money as something, say, for a wedding, but people count it exactly so that when they give you a gift, and when you give them a gift later, and vice versa, you give exactly the same dollar amount. Now, in the US, that would be seen as petty, but that's simply the culture. So the left-hand side has nothing to do with money at all. No one's asking how much it cost because it's simply a physical product like you, just like your business card. Now, there's this Chibo culture is that hierarchy central, punctuality is there. It's a very hierarchical society. It's family controlled companies, and we know they're very successful with things like Samsung, Hyundai, and LG. I have all 3 of those items in my house, so that form works for them. Come early, etc., as usual. And again, another word, hosek, is more than a meal. It's practice for building professional and personal bonds. In other words, you're not trying to make a deal. You're trying to meet other people. This is part of being a trusted guest. The usual things: seating, clean socks, no bare feet, even in restaurants, etc. Allow those to see. Now, if you don't remember this, just follow the person in front of you, perhaps your host or someone else in your party. Just watch what they do. By the way, make sure you don't have holes in your socks or you've been walking around in your sock feet and your socks are dirty. Make sure they're clean. Basic etiquette, pour drinks for others. By the way, we tend to do that too. We don't say, here, pour your own. We do that, even if we only have one small bottle of inexpensive wine. That should be easy. It's the respect of the toast, not of drinking to be inebriated. And there we go, more with toasting. Women in business, some Western women may have problems. We think with the big companies in Korea, that would be an issue. Hands, I meant to say shake hands. So be elegant and refined. You're navigating two worlds of being a woman, being feminine, and trying to be businesslike. So to be a trusted guest, here's what we have. Accept hospitality, reciprocate, stay connected, show appreciation. A little bit different than in Japan. Okay, our last stop here today, if you'll bear with me here, is Taiwan. I would like to say I took this picture. Elephant Mountain is on the outskirts or the edge of Taipei. You can see Taipei 101 there. It used to be one of the world's tallest buildings. It's a great hike up, real good exertion, wonderful place to stop at the top and just take in the day. Again, attire, all of this should look familiar. The usual formality, you have this ready to go. The great thing about suits is too, you only really have to change the shirt and maybe the tie. So you don't really have to pack a whole lot, right? You don't have to bring a suit bag either, by the way. You just roll it up. That makes sure that there's no wrinkles or creases. May I suggest, if you've ever gotten something dry cleaned, save the dry cleaning bag. It's very thin. And if you put your suit into it and you roll it up, you won't have wrinkles. It's a little trick. It works great. It's something about the thinness of the plastic. It keeps anything from bending enough to crease. Hang it up as soon as you get to your hotel or wherever you are. Even the smallest place has somewhere to hang things, a small closet or a wardrobe. Just hang it up. All you have to do is change out your shirts and you're ready to go. That works great for women's suits as well. The usual handshakes. Handshakes are common for male colleagues and allow someone else to introduce you. By the way, that is very Southern too. If there are three people in the room and one knows the two and they don't know each other, it's rude to introduce yourself because you're saying your host was being rude. You have to wait for them to introduce you. In fact, as a Southerner, I've been in the same room with somebody for an hour and it was hard to look at them or talk to them because I still hadn't been introduced. So that lets me know that it's so ingrained that for other cultures, it's ingrained for them too. Just be aware, let them introduce you. Okay, a few things, business etiquette, use title and family name and etc. And there's some crossovers here and the usual thing with gift giving, very similar. Just double check sometimes. Colors and items that are acceptable and unacceptable change according to the culture. Just as an example, for us, the only color for a dress at a wedding for a woman is white. But white represents death in many Asian cultures. You have to be really careful of things you take for granted. They're not implicit to being human. They're implicit to the culture. Structure, hierarchy, more formal in the US, but less so in China. Taiwan is a literal and cultural stepping stone between us and mainland China. They are the meetings are more formal in the US, but less than China. They're in the middle. Again, business cards, print on both sides. By the way, we're going to look at this right here. Be very careful with characters. Now, we know that Chinese characters are for all dialects in China, including the main ones, Mandarin and Cantonese. For example, if you're in Hong Kong, that's Cantonese, but it's the same characters. In Taiwan, it is Mandarin. However, I want you to notice this first line. here, I took this picture in Taipei. 2F means the second floor, is in traditional characters. So here's the problem. I took the wrong book with me because Taiwan uses traditional characters and speaks Mandarin. But on mainland China, they use the second line there, simplified characters, but they speak Mandarin. That's tough. And of course, you got English, and because there's so many people there, we there have after that Japanese and Korean. So I had the wrong book. My friend said, that won't work here because you have simplified characters. I'm like, really? And they use traditional. So you have to be careful and be careful about that when you're getting business cards made. And here's the thing. Chinese characters may be rather full scale for all of China and Taiwan, but you got to be careful whether they're traditional or simplified. If you're going also to somewhere, say in mainland China, you might have to have two sets of cards made. There's no problem with that, right? Just keep them straight. Don't give the wrong ones. Miaozi, it means saving face. I had a nice long conversation with a woman who owned her own tea plantation and sold tea in a shop in the Alishan area of southern Taiwan, in a place called Fuxiao, the highest street in all of Taiwan. And we talked a good amount about this, about Mianzu, which is always saving face. We have the expression in English, saving face. But the worst thing is to make someone feel less than professional or less, that makes them less than human. You have to be very careful. Offer praise, avoid open criticism. Another practice is guanxi, is to invest time in rapport, accept social invitations. And I have never seen nightlife like I saw in Taipei. For a country that's not that large, you would not believe the number of markets, restaurants, et cetera, bars that are open into the wee hours. And as a night owl, I really loved it. Of course, dining again, things change. It's very particular. It's not intuitive. Check it, look up videos, and watch what the people beside you do. Have a snack before you go so you're not digging in. Now, this says leave a little food. This varies in cultures. People way back in the Depression found it insulting if you left food on the plate. But if you don't leave food on the plate here, it looks like you ate it just because you were hungry. So you always leave a little bit of food here. All right. And that's about here. This trusted guest, again, it's very similar to Japan and Korea. If we bring it together, we see some similarities and differences. In these, they're similar, but a little different. And as Austinites, we have some strengths: friendliness, volunteer spirit, curiosity, optimism. That plays in very nicely. I could expand it beyond Austin to Texas and to, well, frankly, Southerners. But there's some possible challenges. We tend to be direct and impatient, and that is rubbing exactly up against traditional hierarchical East Asian cultures. So be careful. Here's our sister cities. I'm going to have a little look here. It's very, very interesting. I think I actually met, believe it or not, in New Mexico, I met somebody from Wita, either the city or the prefecture, which was very interesting. Okay, so we're at the trusted guest stage, and if you'll bear with me here just for a moment, if you have questions, go ahead and start putting that in the chat. But I would like to show you our third and final clip from Everybody Loves Raymond at the end of his 2 weeks. Let's see how he's become a trusted guest in this small town. Hold on just a second.
Slow down with vanilla milk chocolate almond. That's Daz.
All right. Hold on just 1 second. Let's see where we are here. Here we go. Looks like he's riding off into the sunset, and of course he's not. They're still getting on a plane. In fact, he's trying to talk to his great aunt Coletta, that has the house, just trying to, hey, I want to live. And she just says, look, live your life. You don't have to be in Italy. You can be on Long Island. That's where they live in New York. But you see what's happened here with Raymond. What did it cost him? A few dollars for some flowers that are lightly wrapped, a rented bicycle, maybe for free. You know, saying hello to people. First woman maybe doesn't even know, but gave her flowers. This is part of being a trusted guest. He would be welcome back here if he needed to get something done, some exchange with maybe New York Italians like him and Italian Italians. He could get things done. And by the way, it's a real town. It's only a half hour from Rome. That's a little beyond the half mile rule. But do you see what he got involved here? By the way, right in Rome, there's small areas anywhere you are that you could go into. Tourists don't go into, and you can meet people. So I want to do a little test here. If people don't have questions off the hand, this is I didn't quite have a picture, so I had to generate this. I will admit, but this really happened. I was in Temple Bar, this really neat part of Dublin, and I found a neat breakfast place, and sitting there, and you saw these beautiful things. You can see these stores and all of a sudden there's this trash truck, this garbage truck outside, and it's like, oh, yeah, it's in the way. But I want you to notice, you can think about what the food tastes like, smells like. Uh, for me, delightful. I just say the word tea and a teapot appears. I don't have to explain what tea is, you know. And the food was delicious. It was sort of an English breakfasty thing. It came with baked beans, which I'd never do at home, but is delicious there. And you look out and you go, it's too bad that garbage truck is in the way. But you know what? That garbage truck is Dublin. It is Temple Bar. It's not in the way of it. It is the experience. Things aren't in the way of it. It is that. So you watch how they do it, and it was neat. I think there were three of them on the garbage truck I saw, and they were very well coordinated. And the truck you can kind of see here is really small because it has to fit on small streets. That is the experience. You might say, no, a garbage truck is ugly, but the experience is beautiful, and it makes it more full as well. Okay, so our last thing here, if I may say, if we may bring Ben Franklin into the present, this is him if he lived today. Be authentically yourself in your own American style. Don't try to pretend you're not that, even if it's the stereotype of an American. Learn some language and etiquette, show respect, observe daily life, observe it. See difference as difference. It's not better or worse. We cover this a lot in my classes. Just seeing something different does not mean you have to hold one above the other. Dine, toast, and participate, and follow the other leads to build relationships and lead well. And this is how you create opportunities. Be a trusted guest, make a lasting impact. Any comments, questions? I'll just leave Franklin up here for a minute. Any comments, anyone? Or would you like to share I'd love to hear from you. I mean, what could be better on a Friday morning than talking about travel, especially if you come back from a trip and you just get to sit and talk about, like, you wouldn't believe what happened. And I had the most delicious something, and something bad happened, but I made something good out of it. By the way, I'll leave you with one. When I was in Maui three weeks ago, I got this weird text from a Hawaiian phone number, and I'm like, why am I getting that? And it was, they found my wallet. I didn't even know I dropped my wallet. It's the first day I was there, and they left it at a hotel at the valet, and I went up there, and they went, oh yes, somebody just brought that here a little while ago. Here you go. And they were busy, and we both looked at each other, and she said, I didn't know people could be like that. I didn't know somebody would actually give something back. And I'm like, yeah, that's my experience, because that would have been terrible if I didn't have my wallet. But it really gave me, makes me a little emotional right now that somebody would care enough to text me, to find my number in my wallet, to text me, go to a hotel on their vacation. It was just wonderful. And I made a connection with a valet in a hotel that no one ever pays attention to, really, except to say, where's my car? I had a moment with someone. We looked each other in the eye, and I'm like, can you believe that? She says, no, I can't. It was wonderful. So anyone, would you like to share what you found, what's full or beautiful for you? What made you feel more like a trusted guest? What's a place because of that you want to return to? Does anybody have a comment? And by the way, I'd like to note that
Dr. Clark? I just came back from Ireland and I went to a smaller town than Austin, where we have a sister city, and the sister city is called Limerick. And what pleasantly surprised me about Limerick is when I was walking down the high street, I must have heard over 10 international languages. Within a period of, I'd say, 1 hour, I heard not of course English. I heard Gaelic. I heard Japanese, French, Arabic, Italian, German, Spanish from Spain, and Bengali. These are the ones I can remember. There was so much, I can't even use the term diversity. There was so much international visibility. It pleasantly surprised me. I did not expect to see so many people from so many different parts of the world, but it was eye-opening. And for the size of the town that it was, there were also eateries from all around the world. I even saw like barbecue restaurants and like Mexican themed restaurants. And I thought, oh my God, I mean, talk about, breaking barriers and changing mindsets and doing all of that in less than 30 minutes. I'm looking forward to going back and just learning more about this small city in a small country called Ireland, which is able to build relationships with everybody around the world.
That's a great story, Aditi. How do you feel that the locals there felt with it being so international?
It depended on who you spoke to. The younger generation and when I say younger generation, people much younger than me, they live in a different world. They're digital. They want to be seen in an international environment. Those who are my generation and more experienced, I can sense them wanting things to still be slower paced, more quiet. And I think that's more to do with the generation anywhere you go. As we get older, we want things to be more slow paced, more attuned to what we are comfortable with. But the younger generation tends to seek discomfort and seeks it in a way to broaden their horizon.
That's very interesting because I've been reading about and news stories about things like macrame clubs. And you know what? They're not Gen X, they are Gen Z. They're aiming for, and this is really neat. Gen
Mhm.
Z apparently like family style restaurants, the kind that have people that don't know each other on one long table. There
Mhm.
is a push to go a bit out of social media back to things that are physical, and it's being led by people that are under 25. So
That gives me
hopefully
hope.
they'll come. Yeah, it gives me hope. I know I have to deal with students all the time who, it turns out they're less digital than I thought. There is that, and we only barely covered it here. I think in one of these I mentioned how to do, or I might have just in the interest of time didn't cover respect during a Zoom meeting, for example, how people talk. There's still the formalities, even though it's digital, but there is seems to be we're at about a time where the wind, when wind blows and then it's still and blows back the other way outside, we're kind of in that still stage. The wind's about to blow back the other way some. This is, I think, the pattern is that we do want more physical things. We want to touch a gift. We want to touch a business card. Um, that we want things that are not digital. I'm impressed. I have students bring in big, thick books. I'm like, "What class is that for?" They go, "Oh, it's just reading on my own," and they feel guilty. I'm like, "You just made my week. You're reading it for fun, and it's more than 5 pages long." You know. So I think yeah, I think that's going to be more the thing that we're still humans and we need to be like Franklin here. We need to be in a coffee shop. Uh, Starbucks makes most of its business the drive-through, and I don't get it because my favorite thing is to sit and watch people. By the way, I'd like to throw that out for you. If anybody wants to see sameness and watch the tiny vibe that's different, I make a rule that everywhere I go, I have to sit in Starbucks for 90 minutes without any electronics just to see what's different. Because there's sameness, the coffee and tea is the same, but to see how people act differently, even how they order, how they sit down. And well, I hate to say it, but outside of the US, people mostly sit at tables and talk. And in the US, they sit at tables on their devices. That's what I found so far. Um, but thank you for that story, Aditi. It's
Of
nice to
course.
know it's a sister city too. That is that's so entrenched, makes it better for us. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I really appreciate everyone hanging on here. Um,
And
and
I think we would love for Dr. Clark, thank you so much for the training. As we end the session today, we would ask you to keep an eye out for our next session on Asia and then the one that follows for Europe, as well as Mexico and Peru. If you have any feedback for us, please share it through the registration link and look out for the on-demand training on YouTube. Thank you and have a wonderful weekend.
thanks, everyone.